Now, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. I want to assure you that Mr. Bettman and I of the NHL had a very big discussion to ensure that this meeting would not conflict with any of the Canucks playoff games, and as you can see, we managed to achieve that, so thank you for coming. If we had tried to do this last night, it might have been a bit of a different story. Now, I want to welcome you all to the April 22nd meeting of the Planning and Development Committee. I will now look for a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councillor Pelletier, seconded by Mayor Windsor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Now, we're going to move to the single item on tonight's agenda. The Capital Regional District, CRD's Regional Sustainability Strategy, RSS, and the current draft amendment that's been publicized for public feedback and comment. First, I'd like to provide some brief comments about how we reached this point. The CRD has initiated a process to update its RSS, and this process has included outreach to the local municipalities for input in terms of potential amendments to the RSS. In September 2012, the Council of the Day made 2 motions indicating interest to accommodate some form of future development in the Keating, West Saanich area for future consideration in the planning process for the RSS. This input was then incorporated by the CRD into the draft RSS, and which was then released in 2014 for public input and comment. This area was identified within the draft document as the Future Growth Area, also known as the FGA. I know it's a few acronyms. I'm still trying to figure them out. Now, just to clarify, the addition of the FGA to the draft RSS was a decision of council, not a decision by the district staff. In November 2014, prior to the election, the same council that had recommended the additions to the FGA passed a motion to reduce the area proposed as FGA in the draft RSS. The CRD has provided an opportunity for public comment on the draft RSS through their website. As for tonight's special planning and development meeting, Council is providing an opportunity for the public to ask questions on the subject or to provide their feedback on the contents of the CRD's draft RSS. In terms of providing the appropriate notice for tonight's meeting, the district has followed its legislated requirements of public notification. In addition to that, it has sent out 7,000 flyers to households in Central Saanich through Canada Post. Council opted to use the unaddressed add mail option for this mailout. There has been concern expressed within the community about the impacts should the RSS proceed in its current format, including the FGA. However, before we open the floor to questions and comments, I would like to ask Mayor Windsor, as a director at the CRD table, to provide some context as to future steps and processes should the FGA be included in the final version. Mayor Windsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now that we have a summary of how we arrived at today's extraordinary committee meeting, it is important to highlight what the process would be going forward from today. Let me begin by saying that despite the completion of the CRD consultation on the RSS, that there has yet to be a final draft of the Regional Sustainability Strategy produced, and that no bylaw has yet been drafted for consideration by the CRD board. It must be clearly understood, therefore, that this means that the Council has the time to make any further changes to its submission of the Future Growth Policy Area, including adding provisions or restrictions to the proposed Future Growth Policy Area in the eventual bylaw, or removing the area altogether as it deems necessary. This will remain true going forward to the next council meeting. If the Future Growth Policy Area remains incorporated in the RSS through completion and adoption of the implementation bylaw, Central Saanich Council will be required to undertake a process of public consultation on the obligatory amendments to the official community plan bylaw, including a full public hearing to amend the regional context statement, which is section 12 of the official community plan. This may include any criteria or conditions for if or when the future growth area as currently proposed may be included in the urban settlement area. Following the change to the regional context statement, should that happen, within the Central Saanich OCP bylaw, inclusion of lands inside the urban settlement area would require approval by a majority of 50% plus one or 13 directors at the CRD board as a minor amendment under the British Columbia Local Government Act, Part 25. I will also note that the application to the CRD board for making such an amendment would require acceptance by 2/3 of the CRD board members prior to consideration by the board. That is contained in the RSS draft document as it currently exists under Part 5, starting on page 106. Should the CRD ultimately authorize application by Central Saanich, a full public process would be required, including public hearing, to amend the Central Saanich OCP bylaw. The process would also need to consider any conditions that may have been imposed in the regional context statement of the OCP should this continue. Finally, I will again reiterate that unlike a public hearing, this committee meeting does not restrict council in any way from receiving further correspondence on this matter for consideration going forward. I have a motion that I would like to make with regard to this matter, and it is to do with this evening's procedures. We have a large number of people here. I'd like to ask that comments by speakers be a total of 4 minutes on their first opportunity to speak, whereupon the chair, seeing no further first-time speakers, make a second and third call for first-time speakers, and then offering an additional 5 minutes to speakers wishing to a second opportunity to speak.
Second. Second for discussion. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of you who are attending this meeting this evening. I'm going to speak to the motion, but let me begin by saying that, and reiterating what the mayor has just said, this is not a public hearing. It's, however, quite an unusual committee meeting. I've never had a committee meeting like this, in that we've had two written and read statements that haven't been shared with other members of council. I haven't seen them. And that almost looks like a public hearing, although this is not a public hearing. So I was not privy to the statements that have been read out. That's fine. But I want it to be clear to members of the community that when these statements are read out, there isn't unanimity at the council table. There's a difference of opinion on this proposal. I've strongly been opposed to this expansion of the urban containment boundary as I see it as urban sprawl. And I don't think that we should go down this direction. We haven't built out in the Keating area, and I think this is a mistake. So I wanted to make that clear that even when these statements are read out, it doesn't represent everybody at the table, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor King. Any further discussion on the motion on the table? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. So finally, what I would suggest before we go to the mics is I would ask that the speakers please say your name and address, but please say it slowly into the mics. The reason is our staff over there are recording your names and addresses for the public record. And finally, I would make a request that the speakers please be respectful to the speakers, and we would ask that you don't provide post-speech commentary in the form of clapping, cheering, booing, jeering. You guys know what I'm talking about. We want to provide a free space that everybody feels comfortable providing a variety of opinions. So with that being said, I would like to see who would like to step up to the, we've got 2 mics, we're going to alternate back and forth, and I would like to turn the floor over to the residents. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kathy Lowe and I live at 1129 Verdier Avenue. I speak in opposition to the proposed future growth area that the previous council requested be included in the regional sustainability strategy. Our Central Saanich official community plan contains policies that apply to the proposed future growth area lands. They are as follows. Section 3.3.1, Policy 1. The areas designated as rural on Schedule A land use plan are intended to be retained for rural, residential, and agricultural uses over the long term. Policy 2, support agricultural uses on rural lands where possible and discourage subdivision or development of rural lands. Section 4.2, Policy 3. Most new residential and mixed-use residential commercial development should occur as infill and intensification within the urban settlement area as designated on Schedule 8 Land Use Plan. Uses outside of this boundary should be primarily rural, agricultural, or open space. Policy 8, mixed-use commercial residential development is strongly encouraged in the 2 village centers and areas designated for commercial use. Section 5.2.2, Policy 1. The areas of Brentwood Bay and Saanich-Keating Ridge are to remain the primary retail and community service centers and fulfill the central commercial function of the community. Policy 12. No arterial commercial development should be permitted within 1 kilometer of Brentwood Bay or Saanich commercial areas. Section 5.2.5, Policy 1. Do not support the creation of industrial areas within the municipality outside the Keating Business Park. Policy 2. Do not expand the Keating Business Park beyond its current boundaries. Instead, encourage the intensification of existing industrial uses, including the consideration of higher density, taller buildings in appropriate locations. These policies are in place to protect the integrity of the commercial, business, and industrial centers. As I mentioned at the March 9th meeting, our commercial and industrial areas are struggling. We have many empty storefronts, vacant buildings, and underutilized lots. We need to develop a plan to address the decline and decay that already exist in our community, so that we create thriving, vibrant, successful commercial and industrial areas. Densifying within existing core commercial and industrial areas has proven to be a successful approach used by other municipalities. Could we not duplicate their success on a smaller scale appropriate to the rural center designation of the Brentwood Bay and Saanich commercial core areas and the existing designated industrial area? The future growth area carries the risk of creating further decline, decay, and failure in our community, unless we have proven that we have successfully dealt with and managed to overcome the problems that already exist in our commercial and industrial areas. These policies in our official community plan also exist to protect the agricultural capacity of our rural lands. In acknowledgement of our decreased ability to produce our own food and resulting dependence on other areas to provide our food, the Regional Sustainability Strategy contains initiatives and policies supporting local food production and agriculture, such as establishing a standing committee and a farmlands trust and acquisition fund. Policy 2.3.8 states local municipalities agree to identify policies in their regional context statement that increase and protect the region's farms and food lands. Evidence such as drought, extreme climate and weather patterns, and world food shortages indicate a need to increase our local food production so that we are self-reliant. We need a secure and solid land base to do that. So it would seem prudent to use our existing designated settlement areas for residential, commercial, and industrial uses to protect our land base for future food production. I have yet to hear a solid rationale for the need of a future growth area when so much of what we already have is struggling and underutilized. So I cannot support the inclusion of a future growth area in the Regional Sustainability Strategy.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. What I will do is I'll raise my hand with a piece of paper when we're at the 4-minute mark so that I don't have to interrupt your chain of thought. Mic 2.
My name is Ronnie Anderson. I live at 7042 Hagan Road in Brentwood Bay. And I believe it's the Regional Sustainability Strategy, not the Regional Growth Strategy. So by your own document, sustainability is to reduce greenhouse gases, to be resilient to climate change and natural hazards, to manage growth, to conserve and enhance the natural environment, to foster community well-being, including economic development, and to provide cost-effective infrastructure and services. There are several large underdeveloped lots on Keating, plus the entire undeveloped area of the Butler aggregate pit. And I believe this total area undeveloped is over 60 acres. So go down in that pit and look sometime, or better yet, go up onto the top of Erling and look and see how huge that area is, which hasn't even begun to be developed. and will be developed over the next 30 years, it's still a gravel pit. It's still being mined out. It's slowly being filled in, but only the edges of it. There's 60 acres there. This land will provide decades of growth for the Keating Business and Industrial Park. Therefore, our community needs to look at the other aspects of sustainability. In light of creeping urbanization, look at the townhouses beside Sassy's, and climate change, we should be keeping as much of our community in a green and natural state as possible. The pit is already a brownfield and ideally suited for future development. If we are going to manage growth, our goal should be to concentrate growth in existing damaged areas. It makes no sense to expand our industrial lands into green lands with potential as agricultural land. While it's not in the ALR, it still does retain its potential for agricultural use. The undeveloped lands containing aggregate works, some still in the mining stage, will take years to build out, and we do not need to earmark green land for this purpose. Until there is adequate access from the highway, Keating Industrial Park will remain slow to develop. The lands in question will still be intact in 30 years if they retain their existing rural designation and zoning and are not under pressure from potential future development. The potential for rezoning as a minor amendment once designation is changed in the RRS is a hidden agenda which we must not allow to take place. We must not make the mistake of creating land speculators despite the desire of some property owners. Our official community plan has sustainability built into it. Properly managed, our aim should be sustainability, not growth. There is already room for growth in the existing industrial park. The community made these decisions with the creation of our official community plan. Council should not arbitrarily change that plan. It should be made with every effort to retain our valuable green spaces and fully utilize those areas already changed by us. Look at the large area of the pit for future growth. We have not begun to touch its potential. We must do everything we can to avoid urban sprawl. Do not be swayed by speculators.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Microphone 1.
My name is Edward Lowe, and I live at 1129 Verdier Avenue. Good evening, Mayor, Mr. Chair, and members of Council. I just read in the April Seaside Times that in February, our Council approved the Right to Live in a Healthy Environment Declaration, which states that all people have the right to live in a healthy environment, including the right to breathe clean air, the right to drink clean water, the right to consume safe food, the right to access nature, the right to know about pollutants and contaminants released into the local environment, the right to participate in decision-making that will affect the environment. This was initiated by a local Central Saanich resident who approached her municipality. She feels this will change the whole landscape of local municipalities as they consider issues such as expanding the urban containment boundaries, food security, and reviewing the OCPs. The decisions we make today will affect future generations and food security. Therefore, I cannot support the proposed future growth area that is identified in the regional sustainability strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Microphone 2.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Alex Apuchten at 1166 Lucille Drive in Brentwood Bay. I have provided a number of written submissions through email, and I'm not going to read through them. I do want to make one comment. I haven't been able to find them on the website, and I really believe that all communications dealing with this matter should be somewhere on the website, hopefully adjacent to this project, so that I would definitely like to read submissions from other people, and I'm hoping that people would like to read my submissions. I have a few comments which kind of summarize my main points. One of the things that really bothers me about this process today, which is several, I was participant, as an observer mostly, in the last OCP process. Now, and one of the big elements was a very tiny lot within this area was suggested to become a new store for the co-op. Everybody adamantly opposed it. So why are we opening that mess again? I mean, the whole OCP process last time was basically ended up being talking about that one subject. And in fact, many other important subjects were ignored. And here we are again. I mean, that's ridiculous. That was only not even 10 years ago. So that's my first comment, is that we're reopening something which this community has discussed at length and was totally opposed to one lot within that area. Now we're talking about over 100 lots, if I understand the map properly. The other point that I'd like to know is why? We went through this process before with densification. I have yet to understand why. It was never explained. I sat in for the various meetings that we had and the public discussions for densification. And it was kind of like, we're going to have densification, help us understand how to better have it, without anybody explaining why. And in fact, it was a good example of a totally failed process. If you look around, at least Brentwood Bay where I live so I can see things happening, what densification is doing is it is destroying single level, accessible, affordable housing and replacing it with 2- and 3-story luxury, unaffordable, unaccessible homes. Is that what densification was for? To allow developers to make a whole pile of profit? The other element, this is going to require a tremendous amount of additional infrastructure. Now, we have already seen what happens through the revitalization of Brentwood Bay, which, by the way, I opposed as well. It cut down an awful lot of really nice trees and a whole pile of other stuff. We won't go into that. But the point is that benefits have been derived by a small number of people who own property on Brentwood Bay Main Street. Everybody in Central Saanich, even those people who have never been to Brentwood Bay, are still paying for that revitalization. So here we go again. We're going to get somewhere where a small number of developers and a small number of speculators are going to make a lot of money, and all of us are going to be paying for it. So it in actual fact is a money transfer scheme from the pockets of Central Saanich residents to developers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll go back to microphone 1.
Good evening. My name is Daleen Thomas, and I'm a lawyer in Brentwood. I appear here as a resident of Brentwood. I've brought my 2 children with me. I had intended to come alone, but then I ended up with childcare responsibilities, as sometimes happens, being a mother. And it was interesting. We were in the car, and the kid said, "What's going on at the fairgrounds?" Because I said, "Let's drive by and see if anybody's there," knowing it would probably be packed. And I explained to them that the community was looking into the future to see what we would do with our local lands, and then it's been proposed that we take that away from being farmable land, and we talk about farmland all the time in our house. In fact, we have a virtual farming game we play. And the kid said, "That's bad, Mom. We need to go and tell them." And I just thought, I wanted to bring the aspect of children and the future generations into the discussion and recognize that the decisions that are going to be made around this table will ripple into the future, and that it's really important, I think, to look at the premises of why this is being considered, and that I think there's a false premise here, and that's that the community has a lack of assets. When I look at a balance sheet, I see assets and liabilities, and what I've heard from the council over the last meetings that I've attended is that they're focusing on trying to make the budget, trying to cut here and cut there, and how can we cut our costs. And I'd like to just also open our minds to what do we have as assets. And if we could have town halls like this with the amount of potential in this room and have ideas around how we have better income, larger assets, ways to offset the liabilities, that's a much more productive conversation for a community that will unite the community rather than divide them around lines which I see are false. So thanks for my time. I'm going to leave with the kids and have ice cream now.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. I'll go back to microphone number 2.
Good evening, Sharon Butler, 1842 Keating Cross Road. And don't get the idea I'm Butler Brothers, because we're not. We privately own land on Keating Cross Road, original Butler property. However, I have a few questions. We've heard a lot of people talk about Lucille Drive and all the other properties in Brentwood. My first question would be, the actual FGPA, the Future Growth Policy Area, I want to know exactly what area you're talking about, because what I see in a little draft here, it's including an area at West Saanich and Keating Crossroad. Number one question, does the future growth plan affect the growth areas in the Brentwood area or the Saanich area, as I see on this little piece of paper? That's number one. And number two would be, how much agricultural area are we talking about that would be affected by the future growth area? I hear a lot about green living and all that sort of thing, and I'm very into that, that's true, but I want to know how much of the agricultural area is actually affected by this proposed plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. I'm going to see if staff has any comment, perhaps to assist with Ms. Butler's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've switched to a slide that shows, it's similar to the page that was sent out in the mailer. The blue outline is what it would be the future growth policy area that's being proposed in the draft RSS. So it is an area that's just north of Keating Crossroad, where it sort of goes through that curve just west of the Keating industrial area. And then the lands further to the west are off Keating Crossroad out to West Saanich Road. Those lands are currently, none of that land is designated agricultural. Currently, it's not an ALR.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Councillor King.
Oh, you need the mic. Pardon, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was a submission made that identified some lands that are apparently identified as BC farm tax status, shown in the Central Saanich agricultural profile map. Apparently, of those properties, something like, it's hard to count on this map that's quite small, but roughly about, I think, 14 plus properties have had BC farm tax status. So they would be considered farms. And they're inside that area.
Thank you, Councillor King. I'm going to go back to microphone 1.
My name is Ian Cameron. I'm at 7190 Babington Lane in Brentwood Bay. I have 3 points. The first one is very brief. Don't make the mistake of confusing the ALR with agricultural land. Not all land that can be used to grow crops is in the ALR by any means. Secondly, a procedural comment. I'm the president of an outfit called ROCS, the Residents and Ratepayers of Central Saanich Society, and as part of my duties I sent out a reminder to our members saying, you've received notice in the mail of a meeting on Wednesday night, make sure you go there if you have any concerns. I got 3 phone calls and 4 emails back saying, what notice? And 2 of those people live on Kersey, which is the area most impacted by this whole proposal. So I don't know how much you paid Canada Post, but you ought to ask for a refund. And now we get to the
Mr. Chair, I feel compelled to interrupt. I personally spoke with Canada Post and the postie who distributes to Kersey Road today, and she explicitly remembers placing a flyer in every single mailbox, in the rural mailbox, for the Kersey Road route. So I am not certain what happened, but there is direct response from Canada Post that they in fact did distribute among the 7,000 flyers to the rural route that covers Kersey, and Kersey was specifically not excluded.
Okay. And I got...
Back to you, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you. Now we get to the real point. 25 years ago, I ran for council and stood up and said, we've got to preserve farmland because California is going to run out of water. 10 years ago at one of these meetings, I got up and said, we've got to preserve farmland because California is running out of water. California has run out of water. The whole damn state is in a state of drought. And if you go into the supermarket now and take a look at the produce shelves and the fruit bins, you will find there's almost nothing from California. It's all coming from Chile. And the thing about the Saanich Peninsula is it's the one place in Canada where you can put up greenhouses and grow vegetables at the shoulder seasons. Heating those greenhouses is a reasonable proposition, unlike everywhere else in Canada. We really can't afford to put any more buildings on land that in 20 or 25 years are going to be needed to grow vegetables. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Microphone 2.
Good evening, Elizabeth Chambers, 901 Verdier Avenue, Brentwood Bay. Dear Mayor and Council, first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity for all of us to be able to speak to you tonight, and also the opportunity to hear each other, because I think it's really important that we have these times where we can listen to each other and perhaps come to a better understanding of what our needs and values are in Central Saanich. First, I wish to say that I'm completely opposed to the proposed designation of Keating Cross Road, West Saanich for future industrial or commercial development, and my reasons follow. Central Saanich official community plan cites 3 areas for urban development, containment, and cost-effective infrastructure planning. They're very familiar to us: Brentwood Bay, Saanich, Keating Industrial Park. There has been no evidence provided by our planning department that indicates that additional lands will be required, or that we have transportation access to even accommodate extended development. Our current Keating industrial area is underutilized, and the extensive Butler gravel property has already been assigned for future development. The only way I can make sense of this draft proposal by our previous council is in terms of an aftershock. That is, the council was not able to support the Peninsula Co-op in its desire to rezone some of these lands for commercial growth. In fact, it was only—
Excuse me, Ms. Chambers, can you speak up a little? The people in the front row are having trouble hearing you. Thank you.
Oh, is this better?
That's better. Thank you.
All right. That council was not able to support the Peninsula Co-op in its desire to rezone some of these lands for commercial growth. And in fact, it was only the regional growth strategy that prevented further sprawl at the time. Number 2, the only critical RSS issue that I see that has a growing body of evidence is that of food security, and that's what Ian Cameron was just speaking about. At present, much of our food supply does come from California. They've been experiencing a drought for 4 years, nothing in sight of any relief. 50 years ago, Victoria was fed by Gordon Head, Saanich. That land no longer is available for food production. I propose we leave the subject lands rural for the next 30 years and then decide whether we need more widgets or carrots. Rescinding this draft proposal and continuing to be guided by our official community plan addresses all the 6 objectives of the RSS: reducing greenhouse gases, providing resiliency for impacts of climate change, managing growth, fostering community stability, conserving our natural environment, planning for cost-effective infrastructure. I looked at the draft RSS online on the CRD website. The area for future growth has been indicated in purple. It just looks like a bruise on our community. The area for future growth in Central Saanich is vague and troubling, no exact area defined. It only offers a long-term mixed message to residents and investors. I ask you to rectify this by removing West Saanich Keating from the draft plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. Microphone 1.
Hello, my name is Lloyd Deckers. I live at 1158 Clark Road. Couple of points. I'm wondering, after this area has been fully utilized, how much will it cost the municipality to service over, say, a 20-year period? How much tax revenue will it bring in? Because there's a possibility, depending on how it's zoned, that it could either make money for the municipality or lose money for the municipality when it comes to taxation and services. Also, how will changes in the densification of the municipality affect our insurance rating and how much individual homeowners or renters in apartments pay for insurance such as fire or burglary? And also, how much water will the future growth area require when it's fully developed, if it is fully developed? Because the amount of water that the CRD has is a fixed commodity, and there should be some form of prioritizing and means testing as to whether or not expanded development, any part of the CRD warrants the amount of water it will cost to maintain once it's built or preserved. And this is on the topic of housing in general. If you've watched the real estate market in Greater Victoria over the past 40 years, the cost of a piece of real estate in real dollars, not accounting for inflation, almost always doubles after 20 years. So what is affordable housing today on the market system in the CRD will very possibly, in fact I think probably, be high-end real estate in 2 decades. So for people of my generation, that is a concern. I'm finished.
Thank you, Mr. Deckers. Councillor King.
Thank you. Those were very good questions. I just wanted to say that we don't know regarding all those questions. We haven't done that work. We don't have an answer.
Thank you, Councillor King. Microphone 1. Oh, I'll go to microphone 2 as it was next up.
Thank you. My name is Sue Stroud. I live at 1139 Verdier. I'm very concerned about this. I'm very opposed to it. It seems to me like every time we turn around, we have to fight this battle again. And we're tired of not being listened to. In the last municipal election campaign, every one of you was asked at the all candidates meeting if you would support and protect our official community plan. And everyone said yes. I looked at the video again over the last couple days. And this is not protecting our official community plan. This is doing an end run around our plan, around our concerns, which we've expressed again and again and again, and we're tired of it. We really are. If you want to put forward a proposal like this, I suggest you wait to the next election and run on it openly and honestly, so we can really let you know what we think. This is not appropriate. One part of this property is a former cranberry bog. It is a piece of land that was very important to First Nations. It was a major food source to them, and it broke their hearts when it was drained and they could no longer gather berries and ducks there for the winter. It's the kind of sustainable livelihood that we need to be thinking about and preparing for in the future, because we are in very big trouble. It isn't just California that's in a state of drought. Last week, Washington declared a full state of drought. And these aren't droughts that are going to go away if it starts raining next week. The state of California drought will last for 100 years, even if it starts pouring more than 4 times its normal rainfall when there wasn't a drought. I read the science information every day. I've been trying to keep up to speed. Chile, where we are now getting the food, is also in water trouble. And that isn't going to last very long. We need to be prepared to look after ourselves. And we're not doing that. We're not addressing that at all. We seem to be waiting for some other level of government to care about it or to lead us by the nose and get it done. It's up to us to take care of ourselves. And we're not doing that, and we need to do that. Another point I want to bring up is that just in the last council meeting, just before the municipal election, this issue came up. Our current mayor was a councillor at the time, and he voted in favor of it. His statement afterwards to several people was that he voted in favor of it so that he could bring it up afterwards and vote against it. And then afterwards, and this is not the first time he said that on another issue to do with a piece of property in Moodyville. After the election, when it came up again, when people were saying, when are you going to bring this forward and vote against it, we were then told, well, it's too late, we can't do it that way. Well, I got to tell you that citizens don't take very kindly to being told one thing before an election and another thing afterwards. We don't take kindly to being told that you support our official community plan only to find that actually you don't. You're going to tear it apart. So I'd just like to reiterate that we're not going to put up with this anymore. Enough is enough. And everyone here has spoken so eloquently tonight, straight from their hearts, and you need to listen. It's time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stroud. Microphone 1.
Hello, my name is Al Kratz. I live at 6601 West Saanich Road. I've been there for 36 years, so I've seen a lot of changes and understand the area pretty good. I heard a figure of 60 acres being mentioned here, which there's at least 40 parcels involved. So that comes down to 1.5 acres. So what is there is a lifestyle, not a farm. A 60-acre farm is just barely enough for a family to make a living on properly. The land there is kind of poor. Not all of it, I agree, but some of it you've really got to work, because I have a large garden and I have to keep the soil maintained. I put on, give or take, about 20 yards a year just to keep it productive. And what this is for a lot of people also is a farm tax gimmick. Because for 40, you buy 40 chickens and you get farm tax. That's not really farming through this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kratz. I'm going to go to microphone 2.
Thank you. Sorry. My name's Mike Fowler. I live at 6649 West Saanich Road. The house that I live in has been in our family for 7 decades now. I've been around for a week or two. I grew up here in Brentwood. I saw this place when it was all green grass and all that. And every time they want to revisit the official community plan, well, apparently it's a big deal to everybody. We have to revisit every once in a while. That's how things develop and how things happen. To sit out there and pretend and hide all these people, I bet you most of these people here live in houses that were built well after I came to Brentwood. And the reality is that that official community plan upgraded and upgraded as we went along. Now we're doing it again. I think it's a great idea. Some of the properties there, the only properties I can remember that had anything growing on them are the ones that have our fancy new fire hall. They had greenhouses there. All the rest of us never grown a thing since I can remember it, and that's been 60 years now. I think maybe it's time to look at the official committee plan and see if these pieces of property are actually viable as we're thinking they are in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Councillor King.
I just point out again, according to the information that was provided, there are at least 14 plus farms that have been able to maintain farm tax status within the boundary. So based on Central Saanich agricultural profile map. So if that's correct, they've been able to produce enough and maintain their farm tax status, I assume.
Thank you for that, Councillor King. Back to microphone 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob Maxwell. I'm on 6325 Oldfield Road. My concern is with the water. With that small blue rectangle there, it appears to me that over the years that's probably a groundwater discharge zone. I've walked down on the bottom of the municipal property and near the peat zone, the water just bubbles out. Lots of it clear spring water. And all along there, there are a lot of springs and there's very deep, wet, cold peat. In fact, in one spot, Sitka spruce is even growing there. And I think that's one of the major areas for the water for Mabor Flats. Brentwood used to get its water there, its drinking water. It's called Brentwood Springs. Just along there is a ditch that we're not too proud of. I think it might be Stevens Creek, but it's called Stinky Ditch. And that ditch is a municipal drain for part of the, or probably a significant part of the Keating industrial area. And I'm not faulting anyone about this, but still today, after 30 years, there's little oil slicks moving down that ditch. I went there today at 4 o'clock, and there they were, moving down. Now, the municipality hasn't been able to fix that in 30 years. And one of the reports in the Integrated Stormwater Management report says, in order to backtrack and try and fix that water quality, one of the scenarios was to put a great big pond and treat the water somehow. In 2008 figures, that was about $2,247,000, probably more today. So to me, that's the price of not good planning. The other side in the future growth area, I believe, has other groundwater discharge zones, and we don't have any detailed groundwater mapping that I'm aware of, and we don't have any groundwater vulnerability mapping. And all these things should be done, I believe, far ahead of any proposed future growth area. And I'm also worried about the farmers downstream who extract this water in the Hagen Creek area. And they pull it out of there and put it directly onto crops. So I don't think we've really done our homework in any detail. And I don't know why we're going into a new area and looking at the future when we can't fix up the past.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. I'm going to go back to microphone 1 again.
Hello, my name is Barb Whittington, and I live at 6587 West Saanich Road, which I think is right on the southern blue boundary on West Saanich, because I think, Al, you're right there too, and Jody. I've read all the documents, and I'm quite confused about a number of things, so I'm glad we have this opportunity. So we have two major areas. We have Saanich Village, we have Brentwood Village. We don't really need another village unless we just want them to all string along West Saanich and look kind of like Surrey or Newton or something. What I'm wondering about is, when I've read through the documents, is there actually a rationale given by the CRD for future growth areas and why that specific future growth area? Because I couldn't see a rationale in that document. I'm quite concerned about what will happen if we amend our official community plan for this specific reason. Although I agree with my neighbor Mike that we always have to look at that plan, or else we're not doing a good job. I don't support this as it is now, but I'm interested in what you have to say about what the rationale is and what your own personal rationale might be if you chose to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whittington. Mayor Windsor.
Just perhaps some context, whether or not this answers the question as to what the rationale is. The CRD has produced an assessment that by 2038, 300 acres of additional industrial land will be needed somewhere in the Capital Regional District. So there is some basis for consideration of this. Other municipalities were also asked to consider this. I can't tell you what other municipalities have done, but this was the previous council's answer to that. And I also feel compelled at this point to say one thing. With regard to my concerns prior to the election, I said at that meeting that I had concerns and that there needed to be a better public process. I said after the election, there needed to be a better public process. And I don't like taking credit for things, but I was the one who moved the motion to have this committee meeting, which is extraordinary And council supported that. So we are undertaking an extraordinary approach to something rather than not giving the opportunity to the public to provide adequate and fair input to this process, which was perhaps, in fact, it definitely was missed by the previous council, and we're here to correct that. So,
Councillor Cormier.
I'd like to thank Ms. Whittington for her question. It is a question that I've asked a number of times over the last 2 years at the council table, which is show me the rationale for this from the previous council. And I would appreciate our chair this evening, who was part of those decisions, to highlight for us what the rationale was in supporting it. And if staff could also offer any rationale that supports this in addition to what Mayor Windsor has shared, I would appreciate that as well.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Councillor Cormier. Perhaps in the interest of maintaining meeting continuity and sticking with the appropriate ways of managing the meeting, I would ask that the Mayor Windsor assume the chair so that I can speak freely.
Go ahead, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor Windsor. I think in terms of speaking in response to Councillor Cormier's questions, I think if she had questions around my rationale, I provided the rationale during those council meetings. But I will share it again tonight for the benefit of those that might not have been in the chamber at the time. I see this as an opportunity to look towards the future. This isn't something that I envisioned for tomorrow. This isn't something I envisioned for any years right now. As the mayor spoke of, this is what the CRD is calling Vision 2038. I'm simply looking to the future and looking at giving us more of control in our district for our own lands. You all didn't elect 23 members of a CRD board. You elected the council that sits before you today. By doing this, down the road, should we make a choice, and I say should because that's simply where I'm going with this, and I was asked to provide my opinions of where my decisions came from, and that's why I'm going to be as honest with you as I can, that I want to give us more opportunity to control our own destiny should we make that decision down the road. The difference for me between a minor amendment and a major amendment is a decision of how many people need to support that decision that we may put forward in 2038. That's simply it. I'm not trying to go away from the public process that we would still go through. There would still be any type of rezoning. But I'm simply looking for an opportunity that should we as a district decide to make a decision down the road in the future with those lands, none of us can say what we need to do with those lands 15, 20 years from now. But if we need to make a change, I would like to put more power in the hands of the elected officials at the time so that they can be responsive to the needs of the community and have more power. Right now, it's a major change which requires unanimous support at the CRD table, once again, from 23 people. Of those 23 people, you will have elected one. That was my rationale. And as I said, to reiterate, it's not about something it's about opportunity down the road should the need arise. I'll now take back the chair. Any further? Councillor King.
Was that me?
Yeah, Councillor King.
It's just hard to hear with this echo in here. So I was on the previous council and I was opposed at that time as well. I remember the debates and a key reason, one of many, is that I support farmland. I agree that for the future, and we all seem to be speaking in favor of something for the future, I think that we need that farmland for the future. There's 14 plus identified lots that qualify for farm tax status today that are inside this area. So there are clearly 14 plus properties that are farms. Others probably could qualify. So this is an important point, that this is also about farmland. And I've pledged to protect farmland. I've pledged to stand up for the official community plan. And so that's been my position, and it still is.
Thank you, Councillor King. I think I, sorry. We're going to now turn it to the staff in terms of the question about other things in the RSS. It was from the last speaker before we started talking at the committee table that wasn't addressed yet from the speaker. Ms. Whitten's point.
Just to be clear, this is a question of sort of the rationale behind the
yes
FGA. If you'll bear with me a sec. The councillor was correct in that the CRD did an industrial lands inventory as part of the sort of background research leading up to the development of the RSS. And so their analysis essentially in the region over the next 25 years, they're expecting another 100,000 residents. To support that kind of population, they looked at the jobs that are involved with that. And their analysis came up with 340 acres of additional industrial and employment supporting lands that would be required in the region. So, and also in that 25-year time span, there's expected to be some shrinkage of the existing industrial land, as particularly down towards the core area of Victoria, Esquimalt, some of the older industrial lands are converted to other uses, more urban, residential, commercial, those types of uses. So in that context, I think is where this fits. The area we're talking about is just off of this is Keating Industrial Area, is kind of red on this map. The black line around it, Saanich and Brentwood Bay, that's our existing urban settlement area or urban containment boundary, it's often thought of as. And so the purple here would be an expansion of that. The other rationale, if there is that the location of it. It's difficult to find new industrial land in any area. Certainly there, potentially in the western communities, there may be some potential for some of that additional lands, but really the location, what Keating has going for it is, if you look at it on a map of this scale, between the downtown core where the bulk of the population and is and will be in the future, really it's located between the ferries, the airport, and the downtown core. So the movement of goods and essentially the truck traffic of moving goods in and out of the area, it's very well positioned. It's a very desirable area for industrial uses.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Councillor Cormier.
Thank you. I think it's important to state that the regional sustainability strategy, the CRD, is required in this planning process to engage with First Nations and involve them in the planning. Central Saanich, as part of the RSS legislation, is not required to engage, but we as a council have reaffirmed with our First Nations partners that we do want to engage and we do want to work collaboratively so that their interest to develop their lands, which I do understand that they are interested in developing for industrial, commercial, and housing areas as well. And I think it's important to state that in terms of the rationale as well, is that this is a regional plan, and there are two First Nations in the borders of Central Saanich who have aspirations to develop, and we should be encouraging communications with them to coordinate our plans.
Thank you, Councillor Cormier. I'm going to go back to speaker number 1.
Jody Wells, 6611 West Saanich Road. And as a descendant of farming families for multiple generations, just want to make a quick comment about farms and productive farms. And I do know that my property is not what I would call productive farmland, and 40 chickens maybe makes farm status, but it doesn't make what I would call a productive farm.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I'll go to microphone 2.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Janet Cram. Can you hear me?
Can you maybe right close to the mic, Mrs. Cram? Thank you.
Hi, Janet Cram.
Suzanne?
Hi there, Janet Cram. I live at 1072 Holly Park Road.
Are we good? I realize that we've got a different
Can you hear
speaker
me?
than you can hear. Can you, those at the back, hear Ms. Cram? No, if you want to speak up a little bit. Thank you, Ms. Cram. Sorry about this.
I hate this, so this is
All right.
murder for
Well,
me.
thank you for being here.
Okay. My name is Janet Cram, and I live at 1072 Holly Park Road. I could just make this really short and say that I could just say ditto to everybody who's already spoken, who is opposed to this. I would just like to add, I have another concern. I really think that if this is developed at some point, it will have a negative impact on Maber Flats, which is our unofficial bird sanctuary and wetlands. These areas are really disappearing quickly. I know that in the Regional Sustainability Strategy on page 77, it says, and I quote, development that will negatively impact agriculture, natural resource activities in sensitive ecological areas is avoided. And also they mentioned looking after our wetlands as, quote, our lungs of our community. So I really think that pushing in on this wetland area by developing will just increase runoff and just further stress this area out. So I'm opposed to this.
Thank you, Ms. Cran. And before I go to microphone 1, and I know because we've been an hour in, people may start disappearing, I got to put in a bit of a plug. If this is the kind of thing you enjoy, we do this every Monday down at the hall. We'd be happy to see crowds like this. We'll make it even bigger because this is great to see. We're always at it, but anyways, I'm going to go back to microphone 1, please.
Good evening. Lois Thaker, 2375 Alta Vista Place. Some people in the community are quick to criticize people who are sort of against things, and in particular, progress. So while I speak against this proposed change, which will allow a minor change or a minor modification, I'm really speaking in favor of a lot of things. I'm in favor of council finding creative ways to develop our community by ensuring existing business developments within the areas of Keating, Brentwood Bay, and Saanich are pursued and encouraged. There is more housing going in Brentwood Bay, and I'm happy to see that it is of greater density. Continuing this trend with more housing situated above built businesses is also a solution that needs thought. I hope that the days of giant houses and sprawl are coming to an end. Speaking of sprawl, this whole thing looks like sprawl to me, especially since growth areas have already been identified. On the other hand, if we do resist this urge to continue sprawl and leave this area alone, we as a community will look like some of the most intelligent and forward-thinking people around. Our kids and grandkids will thank us for our vision. Even marginal lands may be needed to produce food. I would say that any action that can save land from future development is real progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thaker. Is there microphone 2?
I probably shouldn't even be speaking because I'm one of those people in that district that you're talking about. I'm a farmer.
Can I just get your name and address, please, sir?
Barry Willoughby, 1642 Keating Crossroads. So
Thank you, sir.
I'm sort of in a conflict of interest here because the result of any of this kind of discussion is going to result in, if this area is changed from its present, it will increase the value of those properties. So I mean, I'm not dumb. I can understand that kind of thing. However, I don't know the 14 farmers in that area. I know 2. I'm one of them, and perhaps the property immediately next to us. And I'm probably the only one that really, really works at it. I don't know if any of you know me, but I have the Dahlia farm on Keating Crossroad. And I put in a lot of hours, and I work really hard, and I'm retired, folks. And I do this because I enjoy it. And that's what most people do who do farming. Now, I had a quick look at the Central Saanich Agricultural Area Plan Phase 1, which was a major report that was done on agriculture for Central Saanich. Just so you know, 59% of Central Saanich is included in the ALR. None of these properties we're talking about are in the ALR. So you've already got 60%. Just a little idea of how well farmers do here. According to that report, most farmers are lucky if they make $1. And it says that the Central Saanich ag sector, on average, generated no gross margin and no return on investment. So farming is not a way to make a living in Central Saanich unless you really want to do so. I guess my main point is, where is Central Saanich going to have development in the future? I'm not aware of a lot of land in Central Saanich that's available and is not in the agricultural land reserve. So where did the fire hall get situated? Just up the road from me. Why? It's because it's not in the agricultural land reserve. Why is there development on the corner up at West Saanich? Because there's hardly any land available for development in this community. So I really appreciate the fact this council has at least tried to address this issue. Otherwise, development is going to take place somewhere else. And I think we've got people in this community, or people who'd like to live in this community, that can't live here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Microphone 1. No. Remember, we've done really good. We've done really good. An hour and 10 minutes in. Microphone 1, please.
Thank you very much. Maybe I could get the slide back that shows the area that we're talking about, if that's possible.
We will do that if you can give us your name and address, please, sir.
My name is Michael Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
I live at 7206 Babington Lane, which is in Moodyville, in Brentwood Bay. When I look at this map, what I see is a plan for urban development and urban sprawl. The very opposite of what we've always tried to achieve in the official community plan. Planning for sprawl, it's the most inefficient way of developing a community that there is. It's expensive in terms of services. It's destructive of community structure. It's the wrong way to go, in my opinion. But particularly, I'd like to focus on the commercial area of Brentwood, because we as a community have put a lot of money in a few years ago to revitalizing that commercial area. To my way of thinking, what we have done there is extremely productive. I think that the private investment that has resulted from the public sector revitalization that went on in the Brentwood commercial area is quite remarkable. And one of the reasons that it's happening is not just because we made it pretty, but because of that black line that goes around the outside of Brentwood, which is our what I want to call the urban containment boundary. I'm not sure what you call it now. So it means that people have to think about focusing development. We've created there in Brentwood an area where there's a concentration now of services and retail outlets, which is really very attractive. But there's still a lot of undeveloped or underutilized land, even within that 3-block strip of the commercial area of Brentwood Bay. If we relax this and allow us this, what do you call it, the future growth area, and we see the opportunities for retail development and service provision being spread all along the highway, all along West Saanich Road and all the way through Keating, I just don't see, I see it taking away from what we've already achieved in Brentwood and potentially reducing the development potential of the commercial area in Brentwood. I think they're directly connected, and to my way of thinking, it's really important to keep our focus on continuing to redevelop the areas and develop within the areas that we have now. And of course, exactly the same arguments as apply to industrial development in the Keating industrial area with the potential for the conversion of the pit, or what remains of the pit, as someone said much earlier this evening. So I see both on the commercial sense and in the industrial sense, I think what we're looking at here is completely unnecessary and potentially very expensive and destructive of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. I'm going to go to Mike. Are you waiting for microphone 2, sir? Okay, microphone 2.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to plan for the future. My name is Claire Ebendinger, 914 Verdure Avenue, Brentwood Bay. Just a reminder that Saanich means fertile land. When we talk about agricultural land, we can grow on all kinds of lands. I know people in Brentwood who grow beautiful gardens in their backyard lot. We don't need to just think that farming has to happen on ALR. We need to think about the future of our community, of our children. We need to plan for more agricultural land. We need to also remember that a lot of people come from Victoria and go shopping at the farmers market, at the local farms. And better yet, the farmers go downtown to the farmers market to sell their goods. We need to really stay focused on that. We have an industrial area in Keating which is struggling. Let's figure out why and what we can do to improve that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dinger. Any further speakers on microphone 1? Microphone 1.
My name is Gerald Pottergill. I live at 6630 West Saanich Road. We happen to also own the property 6628 West Saanich Road. In total, we have just short of 2 hectares land, and I am one of those tax dodgers who has farm status. I have just returned from California, where my son happens to work in Silicon Valley, making this technological stuff that you see here tonight a possibility. And he said, whatever you do, don't ever sell that land because we might need it in the future to feed ourselves. I've heard people speak this evening to say somewhat derogatorily about small holdings not being productive. If my knowledge is correct, I would tell you that the average farm size in China is 2 acres. I would challenge people to go down to Fairways Market in our community and find any garlic, find any ginger, find any snap peas that is not produced in China. So simply because a parcel of land is less than 2 acres or less than an acre does not in any way mean that it cannot be productive. All that one has to do is to drive along Wallace Drive and look at Marsh Farm. That land that is used there today had lain fallow for 40 years. I've lived at 6630 West Saanich Road for 43 years. You need only drive down West Saanich Road and look at Ray Creek Farm in a small patch and see what is done there near to Prospect Lake Road. We have to look to the future, and the future is food. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pottergill. Microphone 2.
Good evening, Sharon Butler on 1842 Keating Cross Road again. I'm just going to go back to rationale for just a second. And obviously, like Mr. Willoughby, we're in a little blue area over there. And I just want to speak also, we haven't had a discussion, I haven't had a discussion with Butler Brothers, but I will speak and say to all you folks, Keating Cross Road right now, the way it is in the dog leg, as we all call it, is a bit of a disaster, has been for many years. Now, rationale, going forward, looking to the future, if you want to take it this far, allows Butler Brothers to clean up that area. And we're a lot of talk about the pit tonight. Well, that would probably be a part of it. You're saying, well, look after the pit and develop the pit and so on. Part of it is Keating Cross Road. Most of you people are going to Brentwood and to other areas along there. I bet you go right past our place. You create the gases and everything for our home site, by the way, just so you know. And if I behaved like a lot of you folks here tonight, you wouldn't be living in Brentwood, because my forefathers or whatever, and in Saanich would say, no, 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 you people can't come here. But we're hearing from staff that there's going to be an increase in population in our area. After all, in the Pacific Northwest is one of the most beautiful areas, as we all know. So we're going to expect population, whether we like it or not. We have to move forward. We have to figure out what's going to happen in our roadways and our byways. One of the things I'm going to say to you is, look at Keating Cross Road, really have a good look when you drive through and go home to Brentwood next time. Apparently there are 18,000 traveling vehicles, whatever, on Keating Crossroad every day. So looking to the future, cleaning up that area around the pit, everybody calls it, would certainly be moving forward in my view. Whether it includes the bigger area at the Keating, the West Saanich and Keating area, whether that ultimately is included in the end result, who knows? But at least they're getting, the staff are getting input, council's getting input, and as I say, Keating Crossroad as it is right now, take a good look. It should be put straight through where it was many years ago, which most of you people don't know, but Keating Crossroad was Butler Crossing and it went straight through. It didn't have a dogleg in it. So even that in itself would certainly clean up Keating and certainly would help the pit, as you're saying, to move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Butler. Now I think we've transitioned into second-time speakers.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Just if I could request that people speak to you through the to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. Thank you, Councillor King. Now, were there any other first-time speakers before we? Okay.
I'm the first time. And I apologize, I will not this night have email or hard copy for you. I have 9. Oh. I have a hearing problem, so I can't tell whether you can hear me or not. Is that better?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm short. Short legs couldn't do anything athletic, unlike Carl.
I'm fairly short myself, so I found a way to play. Anyways, please continue.
First of all, I'm Beth Haugen-Deckers from 1158 Clark Road, Brentwood Bay, and my family are very new here. We've only been here since 1941. First of all, I would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to the issues raised by this topic. And I will try to get hard copy or electronic to you in the next few days. I find myself a little bit shaky because I have lived in places where the food ran out. And so I have understandably a strong concern with regard to food, and that does color what I have to say, and I realize that. But I would like to point out that I have read and been impressed by the number of good objectives and policies in general that the CRD goals are for sustainability and how to pay for it, which would be the infrastructure. And I was particularly impressed with their ideas about food security. I realize that on paper, as a possibility for 2038, it looks reasonable from a common sense viewpoint to put additional industrial and employment areas in Central Saanich in this location on Keating's Crossroad between the two highways. Apart from that small green tongue of ALR, which is where the 10,000-year-old deer and cougar trail is. And the farmers there can tell you about the deer and possibly the cougars. I am all for looking ahead to prepare for ramifications of population growth. But what I have also in my mind, that in many civilizations, they had great infrastructure, many of them covered in Mr. Diamond's book, Collapse. But they eventually ran out of food and or water. Central Saanich is uniquely gifted to provide food and water security, not only for Central Saanich, but for the island and the province. And that's one thing we have pointed out in the OCP planning process for at least the last 20 years. As noted by someone else, the California drought was recently on the news that we import $2 billion worth of California organics. That would be good money for Central Saanich. there are some ramifications of getting our zoning wrong. In 1950 in Richmond, they zoned Terra Nova for future growth of houses. By the time they got there, they realized it might not have been such a good idea because it's right in the middle of the migration flyway and we needed agricultural land, but nevertheless, it became houses. In Brentwood Bay, Todd Inlet area, the Todd Inlet watershed was supposed to be a great place for Cadillac Fairview to put in a larger housing development. The next council was elected to reverse the zoning change, and they found they couldn't do it because the reasonable expectation of profit from the land development was so high, there was no way that the council could have had the district pay a reimbursement of the company's reasonable expectation of profit. So be careful about that. When we come to rezoning this area for future growth, we need to be very careful with regard to minor amendments. Page 109. Exclusions from the ALR by 2 hectares or less, that's about 5 acres, do not require a public review process. You also don't require a public review process to add to an adjacent containment boundary, a parcel of 2 hectares or less. This leads to a fear of land speculation and especially of remote land ownership.
Mrs. Hagendeckner, if I can stop you there, you'll have a chance to come up for a second speaking opportunity.
I am actually on my last sentence.
Okay, let's finish.
Right, is
Thank
that
you.
okay? I'd like to finish it off.
Please do.
The main point I worry about is mission creep via the 2 hectare parcels. And I would therefore suggest that our fair share in regard to the regional sustainability strategy is our unique gift of food land, good soil, artesian water, which caused us to be called the land of plenty. I would suggest that you ask the CRD to reassign our designation. Local issues are allowed to flex the planning, and our responsibility is to give genuine support to our farmers. And I would like to thank you again for including us in your circle of information. That's a really important thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. Haugendecker. And please feel free to send the full document to us. Just a reminder, the point that was raised at the start of the session for those that may have come in late, unlike a public hearing, you do have the ability to provide information to us after tonight. We don't go into the no-fly zone similar to that, so please feel free to still reach out to us directly or speak to us at upcoming council meetings. Microphone 2.
I'm Larry Skaggs at 1620 Keating Cross Road. And I just wanted to address a couple of things. One is that I applaud the council, all of you, for wanting to look far into the future to see what will happen with Central Saanich. I believe Central Saanich is in a unique position in the current political spectrum of the lower island because we're a small enough community of people that we can actually have input and see our input in results, which I think you lose as you get part of a larger metropolitan area, especially when you're the small part of the metropolitan area. But I would encourage us to look at realities more than when we're looking to the long-term future. I would ask, how many people walked to this meeting tonight?
Sir, if you can just address the table, please.
I'm sorry, how many people walked to the meeting tonight? How many people rode their bicycle to the meeting tonight? I think that indicates that we need a form of transportation that gets us fairly long distances that we aren't capable of doing on foot. And if you live on Tanner Ridge, for instance, it's a long way to the grocery store if you walk. So I think part of the long-term plan in regard to the myriad things that you're looking at, from greenhouse gases to community development, requires that we look realistically at what we want to be able to do in the future. As somebody has addressed, Keating Crossroad is a disaster in terms of transportation. The intersection with the highway for Keating Crossroad is an even bigger disaster. The fact that semi-trucks have to make a left turn, I don't remember the name of the street, to get down to the highway off Mountain View, is a disaster. These are all major, major problems for Central Saanich to solve before it increases its development. And so I think we should, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Skaggs. I'll go to microphone 1.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Jack Marr of 7120 VNS Road in Saanich. I'm going to make one big recommendation to Council if you move it forward, and that is to restrict industrial site on the south side of Keating Cross only, and not go past Keating Cross on the north side. This way you have the truck traffic and the nice road, wide road to accommodate the industrial area. And the other suggestion I'm going to make, I understand there was 14 farms that gets farm taxes along that area. I think you people should ask the BC Assessment Authority and come and explain it to Council how they get farm taxes. Because the way it reads now is a bona fide farmer, if they rent a piece of property, it becomes part of their farming unit. It doesn't have to produce any money out of that piece of property, as long as he has a document with a lease saying that he's farming that as part of his farming unit, and that's how they get farm taxes. I think you have to look at the future. The first RGS was done 10 years ago, and it took 10 years now to come to this second stage of the RSS. Don't forget, if you shoot this down, it's going to take another 10 years probably or more to review it again. And I think you should actually, in my opinion, you should adopt this with some minor amendments to it. Looking at some of the land that you people are talking about, there's no more land. The largest parcel of land for development that's not in the LR is on Hovey Road between Wallace and East Saanich Road. There's 4 acres there. That's the only largest parcel that's not in the LR for development at the moment. I think you have to look at the greater in the future. If you open that up, don't forget, you know, the more land you put that's available for development, the land cost goes down a little. And if you're looking at for affordable housing, you need room to work with, you know, at least some land that's available. And I'm sure that if you allow any large development, you could actually get the developers actually to build a percentage as low-cost housing for the people. You know, they say Brentwood, you know, it's a one-street village. I mean, it doesn't go past one block on each side of the road. So if you do increase any of the commercial zone down towards Keating Cross, and then possibly you can bring in a fairly large store that can accommodate all types of needs, because right now you can't find a necktie or a pair of socks in Brentwood or Saanich, as far as I know. I may be mistaken, but that's how restrictive the whole issue is. So I'm supportive of this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marr. Microphone 2.
Mr. Chairman, Duncan Myers. I live at 208 1236 Verdier in Brentwood Bay. I want to take a slightly different tack. I'm a relative newcomer to the community, but I have been coming to the Saanich and Victoria area for over 50 years, or just about 50 years now. And when I had the opportunity to move here, I did. Another opportunity I had was to have been on a council for a number of years and been on economic development and been involved in OCPs. And this notice, which I appreciated receiving, certainly brought some light to the fact that 20 years is a very short time frame. And with this particular area, obviously there are some particularly important issues if you're looking at expanding on the industrial park. And the points I would like to make are the fact that the industrial park is a very important part of the economic development of this community. And as was pointed out by the planner, when you look at the growth in the general regional district area, things are going to happen. However, one thing that disappoints me is that when I look at the the Keating Road, when you consider that there are 1 million people a year come to the Butchart Gardens alone, all the farms that we have in the area that are a major attraction for people to purchase produce directly from the farms, and there's really nothing that indicates that we have a world-class attraction on our doorstep. And for example, as Keating will grow eventually, I hope it will not grow as much as has happened in the past, where these industrial parks have that connotation of industrial. I think Keating Road could really be the gateway to this Brentwood Bay area, and the fact that you have this 1 million visitors coming to your area is a great marketing tool. And again, because of the rural nature of the community, I would like to see Keating Road, just to, before anything else happens, that you, as you have done in Brentwood Bay, you have the Central Boulevard, you have the trees, you have a welcome sign. Whatever the sign might be, green and growing, for example, we've heard a lot tonight about how important the agricultural base will continue to be, but in conjunction with the industrial park, I think, for example, a gateway to the world-renowned Butchart Gardens, but I think the businesses would be happy to help to make that Keating Road look more attractive and in keeping with the wonderful rural community that we have. I have made some notes, and I have submitted them, but I just wanted to put a little slightly different perspective on the future, because it is going to grow, and I want to be part of this community. I think we have a wonderful community, and I think we've had some wonderful comments tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Now, just to clarify, did you say you were a new resident to Central Saanich?
I just moved to Brentwood Bay, or to Verdier, in September.
Then perhaps I would suggest, instead of calling it your community, you can now call it our community. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
I believe there was a question from Councillor Peltiel.
Oh, that was close. I just wanted to touch on one of your points there about Keating and what's coming down the pipes for the future. In our strategic planning session that happened in February, Council did earmark a budget over the next 2 years for creating deliverables and actually figuring out ways that we can, through third party, expand Keating through economic development and really enhance the existing area. And I think you've touched on some really good points. So we will keep you updated in how that conversation goes. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to microphone 1.
Jody Wells again here. I've heard the term urban sprawl used quite a few times here tonight, and I don't understand why any other high density growth models are being discussed, such as affordable housing. And so I guess really to tie it off, it seems like we have an urban containment area there where there's people saying, now that we live here, we don't want anyone else to live here. I've heard people talk about future and children, and we should be thinking to the future. I have 5 daughters. They're over 20 now. They'd like to live in Central Saanich too.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I'm going to go to microphone 2.
Ronnie Anderson, 7042 Hagen Road. I just want to point out there's lots of discussion about where we'll go. It's important when you look at that purple area on that map and it shows Keating Industrial Park that fully, I'm going to say a third of it on the left-hand side there is in fact undeveloped at this time. Now it's gone. So that you can see that when people wonder, where it's going to go, you don't, when you go past the school, you don't realize how big the pit is on the other side. And former Mayor Marr did point out, not that this is a discussion about housing, but there is also a large piece of land, as he said, I think 4 acres or larger, maybe it was 4 hectares, across from Centennial Park, which is in the urban containment area, and is a logical place, obviously, for housing before you put pressure on any of our other sort of agricultural areas. But we haven't built out our industrial park, and if you're looking at 300 acres needed in the future, then look, we have 60 that's not developed. So we can already do our part without affecting any green spaces in our district at the moment and make a valuable contribution to the entire community without impacting what is already untouched. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Microphone 1.
My name is Liz Puttergill. I live at 6630 West Saanich Road. Somebody mentioned that there were 18,000 cars a day that went down Keating Crossroad. Well, I can tell you that in front of my house, which is directly across from McHattie Road, 23,000 cars go by. Many of them are trucks. So I would like to give some advice here. Why do we not have a better access on and off the highway? If Mr. Lunn could do it, why couldn't we do 1/4 of what he did and give a safer access to trucks? That's why they come down West Saanich Road. That's why people don't want to go to the industrial area here, because the access is so dangerous. If you did something about this, you would find that you have sufficient land for your industrial park, and it would always be full instead of half empty. Thank you very much. And by the way, I do not approve of this thing either, and we have to think about it. I've been here for 43 years, and I've seen different councils with different approaches. Some of them are really for open it up and sell it to the, who's, and everybody's going to make money. So this municipality has been under a lot of stress for many times. So just think of the future. You're not all going to be here. I'm certainly not going to be here in 30 years, I'll tell you that. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Puttergill. And I can assure you to your comments about the looking to work for a better access off the highway. I mean, that's one of the things that I would say every year in my brief time on council at UBCM, where we can get a chance to speak with the Minister of Transportation, that's the top of our priority list. So we keep knocking on that door. I think our next strategy, we're going to try and bring him out here, and we've already decided that we're going to take him down the highway during rush hour, and we're going to sit in that left turn lane and let him feel what the cars do to our car while he's sitting in it. So if we can get him out here, definitely we're going to take him that way. I'm going to go back to microphone 2.
Dave Thomas, 1490 Kersey Road. Just for the record, I did not receive anything from Canada Post, so maybe you should go back for your refund. I'm not in favor of this proposal. Butler Pit has got tons of future industrial park. If we need more industrial, as they mine the gravel out, there's lots of room. A future growth area, if we're going to have one, it should all border an existing urban area where the services are already there, not starting afresh, especially on land that's good for other uses. Just for the record, I have farm status on that property and other properties. So, you don't make a lot of money, but call it a lifestyle or hobby, whatever you want to call it, but it's doable. It takes work. Can't read my own writing. So anyway, this land should be it's arable land. It's not all used to its potential, but it's not to say it can't be down the road. So let's use existing land, let's infill like we have been doing. And the other point, you say you want to have council make decisions. I think one of the beauties of having the CRD is they can step back and look at the big picture and overrule the council, because we've had good councils, we've had bad councils. Just take one bad council and it can do a lot of damage. So let's keep our OCP. We do that every 10 years. We don't need a future growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Microphone 1.
I just have a question. Of the 300 acres that the CRD has identified as needed for industrial land, I'm just wondering how many acres Central Saanich could provide with the Butler gravel pit and the underutilized lands, if that's been tallied to see how much land we actually have available.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. I'm going to go to staff and see if Mr. Gray can help with that.
The industrial lands inventory looked at existing industrial lands, and also they had a tally of some of the potential more intense uses within those lands, not just in Central Saanich but elsewhere. I believe the 340 acres was beyond that, but looking at that 25, 30-year time span.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
It's 148.
Councillor Cormier.
I just wanted to have staff maybe have another opportunity. I believe the speaker was asking what land is available to add to that need in Central Saanich, if I heard the question correctly.
Thank you, Councillor Cormier. Mr. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There wasn't a divvying up or amount that was allotted to each community within the CRD. It was simply analysis of the entire region and how much total new industrial land would be required over that projection out to 2038. There, as part of the analysis, they did identify and sort of count that there is lands, the Butler gravel pit and some other properties in Keating Crossroad, which are developed to a very low intensity of use. That was part of the analysis, but it wasn't sort of divvied up saying or identifying locations or sort of allotting area to different communities. But the future growth area was really, as has been described earlier, was a suggestion of Central Saanich Council that this would be an area where some of that capacity, I guess, could be accommodated.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. And I'm going to go to Mayor Windsor.
It's my understanding at the CRD that the need for 340 acres of additional land has not yet been met across the capital region. Some communities have offered some land, but they have not met the anticipated requirement for the entire 340 acres that are anticipated to be needed by 2038. And just to summarize, I think that Mr. Gregg said that it's 140 acres that is this current site, and yeah, that's really the end of my comment, really.
Thank you, Mayor Windsor. I'm going to go back to microphone 1.
Anna Coholt, 1550 Kersey Road, and I just want to reemphasize we did not get any notices, and it does not feel very good to be paved over without any prior advancements or information given. I just don't know if the irony has been clear to anyone, but today's Earth Day, where we celebrate being green, and yet you're talking about paving over areas that are green. I know Mrs. Butler doesn't like Keating, but
If you can please continue to just address the committee, please.
You go down Keating Crossroad and you take the curve and it opens up to a beautiful lush green area right now. It's totally self-sustained as it is. There is no services whatsoever available. And you're talking about, instead of being sustainable future, to make it development. And the additional expenses. And I really don't know where the drive for this is and the need. We have lived under under siege for this for the past 20 years. And I really believe that it would get a rest, especially you look at the map and see how it was done on the right-hand side of the municipality. And you have 12 kilometers of road there and only housing and no services whatsoever, where you can, get it densified and make it smarter living instead of just keep sprawling. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coholt. Microphone 2.
I'd just like to set the record straight on the official community
If you could
plan.
just repeat your name and
sorry.
address, please. Thank you, Ms. Stroud.
Sue Stroud, 1139 Verdier. When I first moved here in 1970, I lived at 2442 Tanner Road. I walked every day to Mount Newton School, there and back. Mom never came and picked us up. We walked. And I just want to set the record straight about the official community plan. Every 5 years, we have a review of that plan. We just did one 2 years ago. So it's not like it's not being looked at all the time. We do regular reviews. 3 years from now, we'll be at it again. So don't let anybody tell you that it's wrong to complain about bringing it up over and over and over, because it is wrong. We have a process. I also was taught that agriculture was an industry, and I would suggest that you go back to the CRD and say, that is our industry of choice. Thank you very much. I think that's extremely important for us to do. So, August 17th, 1993, I started working for BC Housing, which provides low-income subsidized housing throughout the capital region. It is true that there are people who want to live in our community who can no longer afford to. We're driving people out of our community by constantly falling for developers who say to us, we're going to build affordable housing, or the new buzzword, we're going to build workforce housing. But they never do. They never build what people can actually afford. They never build the rental housing we need. We never find a way to build low-income subsidized housing, which we need. And I challenge each and every one of you to go door knocking at Blanchard Court, Union, Edge Place, Corners, Bay, Chambers, and that's just BC Housing directly managed buildings, and not all of them either. But you could also go door knocking at Pacifica Housing buildings, at Capital Region Housing buildings, and many other little one-offs. And you will find in all those buildings people from Central Saanich who can no longer afford to live here, who've had to move away and move out of their community, away from their support systems in order to survive. How do I know that? I was the front desk receptionist for 20 years at BC Housing. It's only the last 2 years that I haven't had that position. I've graduated to invoicing. I handled every single application. I know exactly where they came from. I know the names of all those tenants and all those people on that waiting list. We have not done our fair share. Every time we open the door to developers, they build $400,000 houses that cannot be afforded by the people who need the housing in our community. So we need to smarten up. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Stroud. Just to one of your points there about the last time the OCP was reviewed, I don't recall a review since my time on council in 2011, but I'm going to go to Mr. Gregg to see if you can provide an update as to when the OCP was last reviewed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was 2007, 2008.
2007, 2008?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I'm going to go to microphone 1.
Sorry, I didn't make my question clear. What I wanted to know is, has Central Saanich done an inventory of all the existing potential industrial land so we can see how much exactly we have in Butler Brothers, including the underutilized lands that are in the Keating Industrial Park? I would just like to know what the total amount of potential industrial land is that we actually have.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. Mr. Gregg?
Mr. Chair, approximately 75 to 80 acres.
Okay, the answer was approximately 75 acres. Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Back to microphone 2.
James McNulty, 6654 Butler Crescent. I'm actually a local business owner out here and a homeowner. One of the things I've been noticing is that there's a lot of construction industry places that they need yard space. They don't need second floor offices in the front of Keating. And so I know of 2 businesses recently that have bought 55 acres in Millstream because the space isn't available on Keating. And my business is growing. We're buying new trucks, and we're going to run out of yard space soon too. So I think it's something to think about. And I think the future growth area is a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McNulty. Back to microphone 1.
Hello, my name is Lloyd Deckers. I live at 1158 Clark Road. There has been a lot of discussion tonight about the fact that it's hard for farmers to make a living, and that is certainly true if you take a look at how commodities are priced. More than 50% of the price of gasoline is the price of crude oil, the retail price of gasoline, that is. Yet when it comes to the retail price of food, such as fruits and vegetables and animal produce, the frontline producer gets a lot less of the retail price. Now, I know the CRD cannot deal with the entire global commodities market, but perhaps the CRD could look into enhancing ways for farmers to get a higher, more reliable income and a better share of the retail price of food, at least as it's sold locally. One method would be for a farmers cooperative to create gift certificates for locally grown food. According to one retail economist, 1/3 of all gift certificates never get used, depending on who you ask. So that would be a way for farmers as a group to get income. And it is one creative way of giving someone a gift certificate for locally grown agricultural produce.
Thank you, Mr. Deckers. I'm going to go back to microphone 1.
Hannah Coholt, 1550 Kersey. I just meant to thank council for, even if I wasn't notified, that you did make the effort to call the community in. And I keep hearing about agriculture just being growing and maybe 40 chickens, but it's also cows and donkeys and trees. And I have personally planted 125 trees on my property. So it can be a lot of different things when you have the space, as well as the hobby farmers that want to have a horse or donkeys. And we just heard how the industrial needs storage space, while other people like having live things around them. So, and there's not too many of those left.
Thank you, Ms. Coholt. Mayor Windsor?
Just to address some of the things that were said here tonight, I felt that there's a little bit of history that is actually required. There was a resolution from Council 347.13. That's the .13 means 2013. So this was read like this: the staff memorandum dated June 5th, 2013, from the Director of Planning and Building Services, entitled "Update on the Central Saanich OCP Growth Management Policies and Input into the Regional Sustainability Strategy. Next steps be received." And Council, this is Council now, endorse the following order of priorities to clarify the district's approach to developments and growth management boundaries in the context of the Central Saanich OCP bylaw and regional growth management policies. A, continue to encourage and support redevelopment and densification of the core of the Brentwood Bay and Saanich Village. B, encourage and support more intensive use of underdeveloped industrial lands in the Keating Business Park. C, give consideration to proposals that would add residential uses within mixed-use development on existing industrial land, subject to ensuring that commercial uses are not limited by the addition of any residential uses. D, encourage and support the conversion of existing gravel extraction industrial lands and consider mixed-use industrial, commercial, residential development to accommodate an appropriately high density of people and jobs in this area. And once plans for redevelopment of depleted gravel extractions, pardon me, sorry, my system is locked. Sorry. Once plans for redevelopment of depleted gravel extraction areas are clear, then consider the initiative of landowners expanding the area of designated industrial lands and the urban settlement area boundary to non-ALR sites that are contiguous with a developed industrial area where such expansion can provide adequate buffering of farmland and riparian areas. So Council has actually already considered most of what has been said here tonight and has set out an order of things. I want to reiterate what Chair Jensen said earlier. This is not about development tomorrow. This is about long-term planning with the potential, only the potential of something happening in the future. It's not about absolute, it's about the potential, and that's if council chooses to proceed with it. Council may change its mind based on the input here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Windsor. Councillor King.
I recall those days when then Councillor Terry Siklenka was championing this initiative before Mr. Windsor, then Councillor Windsor, but before he became a councillor, and the debates that we had at the table. I remember being in the minority in that at the very early stages. What I want to make a point about is that I think there are some who are suggesting that they don't have a position on this or haven't taken a position, but in fact, we've had 2 votes to withdraw this from the regional sustainability strategy so far, and they've taken a position in those 2 votes. So it's not as if they're just waiting to hear from the community because it's been moved along. They've taken a position on this to date. I hope that your input will convince them to change their position because we need farmland for the future.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important to clarify that some of us on council voted neither really for or against, but our goal was to have this meeting this evening and to wait until we had the opportunity to hear from the community before making a decision. Thank you.
Mayor Windsor.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Thompson. That does save me having to reiterate that point. Just to point out that motion that I read to you from June of 2013 was carried unanimously by Mayor Bryson, Councillors Cormier, Garrison, Jensen, King, Olmsted, and Windsor. Just to be clear about who supported this motion. Terry Siklenka's name is not here.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. What I had stated that Terry Siklenka was part of the process at the very beginning that predates this motion and probably predates the memory of Mayor Windsor.
Thank you. We're going to go back to microphone 1, please.
Again, Elizabeth Chambers, 901 Verdier Avenue, Brentwood Bay. So my question, I guess, is to the mayor. When you talk about, we're looking at the future, possible, after everything else is built out, we might look at this. Now, what makes me nervous about that is we looked at it very specifically in 2013 for the co-op, and this council voted to have that property, part of that property, rezoned for the co-op. So that wasn't in the future, in some possible time when everything else was built out. This council, the previous council, voted to rezone part of this land.
Now, just to clarify, I believe that was the previous council. I believe that was pre-2011 council that did vote in favor of that proposal. Microphone 1.
My name is Dan Gentile. I live at 7035 Wallace Drive. I think that climate change is a cold, hard fact that we have to bear in mind. Most of our produce that we eat today, unfortunately, does come from the United States, from California, or from other places, China. With climate change happening, and I think it's our children and our grandchildren that are really going to suffer from this, we have to think about the fact that as the drought continues in places like California, we in Canada, not the United States, are probably going to be cut off. They'll take care of their own before they take care of us. And I think that we better take care of ourselves. And I think that we better look at the farmland we've got, whether it's classified as farmland now or not. If it's arable land, I think we should look at it carefully and we should plan for the future, because I think the future is coming and it's not going to be a fun one. And I think that we should think about our children and we should think about feeding them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gentile. Back to microphone 1.
Below 1129 Verdier Avenue. I think we have to understand the process here, that if the future growth area is included in the regional sustainability strategy, that our council can't control what development applications will come and when they will come. Anybody can apply for anything at any time. It doesn't mean they'll get it, but they can make an application. There have been 2 on Keating. I believe it was in 2011. It was with Mayor Marr, and the development consultant, Denise Kors, actually brought the application back again under the community charter, I think, stating that the mayor had the opportunity to revisit it. It was voted down twice, but I know there's been 2 residential, I believe they wanted to rezone and subdivide their 2 properties on Keating. There's the co-op. So I don't think maybe the intention is to have it in the future, but I don't think that's necessarily what will happen. If we try to put some provisos in, again, a future council, if the bylaws pass to make this a future council could just undo that. So I think we have to understand, if it gets in there, it does open the potential, not necessarily far into the future.
Ms. Lowe? Thank you. Mayor Windsor?
To clarify, with the opening remarks I gave, if any version of this future growth area is incorporated into the regional sustainability bylaw at the CRD, Central Saanich would then have to amend its OCP, the regional context statement, section 12. It has 2 years to do that. Suit last time around took 5, as an example. So there isn't necessarily a guarantee that it gets resolved in 2. If in fact it got into the regional context statement, you then need a further process to actually amend the OCP again to include the lands into the the urban containment or urban settlement area. So there is a multi-step process. No development applications could be considered until all those conditions were in fact met.
Thank you, Mayor Windsor. Councillor Cormier.
I just felt the need to say that I would prefer to avoid land speculation, and I would prefer that we get an opportunity past the future growth area to embrace the objectives of the RSS and put our time and energy to adding to local food security and reducing carbon emissions, developing our transportation system, supporting strong, walkable communities. And this has been, I guess this has been my view, and I feel that we're losing the opportunity to move forward on some really positive stuff. And I think that it's helpful to hear the feedback, and it's helpful to hear that we've gone through this several times. But I'm just drawing attention that I think we need to get past it, and I think we need to put the energies towards what the RSS is meant to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Cormier. I'm going to go back to microphone 2.
Alex Sokoftin, 1166 Lucille Drive in Brentwood Bay. I made a comment on my first time at the mic. I now understand I should have posed it as a question. Where will we be able to read the various written submissions, and considering the fact that you are soliciting the submissions beyond this meeting, it obviously would need to be a place which is updated, unlike the normal meeting minutes, which are basically frozen once published.
Thank you, Mr. Lucan. Mayor Windsor?
In response to that, I actually did have a second motion that I was waiting for the end of the meeting to move, but I'll move it now in response to that query, and that is that all correspondence addressed to Mayor and Council received to date, including this evening, along with statements made here this evening, be considered by Council on the agenda in the first meeting in May.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded. Mayor Windsor, did you want to speak any further to your motion? Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Thompson.
I think it's important to clarify that letters should be addressed to mayor and council in order to get onto the agenda. I did receive some today to me personally to add to the agenda. For letters to be on the agenda, they need to be addressed to mayor and council, District of Central Saanich. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've enjoyed this evening so far, and perhaps on the motion, could I get some explanation what the purpose is? I mean, I would assume that the literature, the information that's been presented would, it's been received at this committee meeting, would then be placed on a council meeting. So I'm just not sure what the motion is intended to do that wouldn't be done otherwise.
Perhaps I'll see if the mover wants to speak to that.
The motion sets out that specifically that information be moved to the first meeting in May. That's really the intent of the motion, giving clarity as to when it will be considered, and that those folks here tonight who wish to look at it, seek it online, will be able to do so by looking at the first council meeting in May's agenda.
So, and is it intended then just to make it available to the community, or is it to make it an agenda item as well for further discussion?
It would also make it an agenda item for further discussion. That's why it would be to be considered at the council meeting, first meeting in May.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, is that a doable timeline?
Mr. Robbins?
And in consideration of other agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Councillor Cormier.
I understand that the CRD staff will be presenting a report to the Committee of the Whole at the CRD on the 29th of April, and I would like to ask our mayor and representative on the CRD whether it's his intention to also make that available, the collective feedback that's being reported on a regional basis, also for consideration for that May 1st meeting.
Mayor Windsor?
As is always the case, when I have something to report with regard to the CRD, I will do so during the opportunity afforded on the agenda at that meeting. That would be the logical place to Councillor Cormier as well to the rest of the council and to the public. Obviously, that is the correct place for me to share any information that is relevant to the RSS from that Committee of the Whole meeting. Obviously, I don't yet have those details, but that meeting will take place on April the 29th, and as I said, will be reported back at the first meeting in May.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps I can ask a question of staff. Should this motion pass to have this looked at the first council meeting in May, what would be the deadline for further public comment and submissions that we would receive in time to be on the agenda for that meeting? Or as late items, just to give the public a sense of up until which point could they make a written submission?
Would be noon Wednesday, April 29th.
April the 29th, and that could be submitted, okay. At noon on the 29th?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Is there any further discussion on the motion? We'll call the question. All in favor? Sure. All in favor. You can look down the side. I was looking on one side. Thank you. I got to look both ways. Any opposed? The motion carries with none opposed. Councillor Thompson asked me to clarify that once the agenda is up, it is on the website in perpetuity. Now, I see speakers back to speaker one. I'm going to go back to speaker one.
My name is Edward Lowe, 1129 Liberty Road. So I just heard the mayor said this process could take like 2 to 5 years. So why are we always talking about 20, 30 years down the road that this is going to be going ahead?
Sorry.
So, I would just like to get that clarified because that's what everybody's talking about all along. That this is further down the road than the 5 years. If somebody comes along with an application after 5 years, then it's going ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. I will ask Mayor Windsor to clarify that for me. So for absolute clarity, it was only on the amendment of the regional context statement. This is the last time around when the regional growth strategy was adopted. Municipalities are required to amend their OCD if there are any changes, they have to do that. That was the portion that took them an extended period of time to actually achieve. It wasn't that they then, after achieved that, could go to develop. They still had to go through the other processes and decide that they wanted to do that, and then a further part of the process. It was really just that one little part of the amendment to the regional context statement, which wouldn't automatically authorize any type of development. There would be further changes required, and then be a further public process. The bare minimum is a public hearing. I can't speculate as to what the council of the day would choose to do. We chose to have an extraordinary committee meeting tonight on this subject. Thank you, Mayor Windsor. I think that first time speaker, might call one.
Good evening, council. David Spence is my name. I'm at 6880 Wallace Drive. I'd like to better understand exactly what is before us in making a decision. My understanding that the resolution that the mayor read to us was regarding only the purple black outline area on the map, which has Keating Cross running through the middle. Is that correct?
That was with respect to the 347.13. The resolution. Okay, so that's A, B, C, D, and E. E was once pressed.
You don't have to be reading.
Yeah.
It was regarding just that section that I see on the map.
Well, it does actually touch on the blue section because it does say consider expanding the area of designated industrial lands and the urban settlement area boundary to non-ALR sites that are contiguous with the developed industrial area where such expansion can provide adequate buffering of farmland and riparian areas.
But that does not define what that adjacent lands would include.
That's correct.
So,
it doesn't describe that in this particular project.
And that resolution was clearly supported by the majority of council.
It was unanimous.
It was unanimous. The outline of the FGA is not a designation that Central Saanich has described, but rather is a designation that has come from the CRD.
We submitted it to the CRD in September of 2012. It was then shrunk in November of 2014.
And when was the decision made to describe the FGA, which is two parts, as I see on this map? When was that chosen?
So the original goes back to September of 2012. And then it was, again, it decreased in size in November of 2014, but the final decision has yet to be made because the CRD hasn't passed the pilot. So council still has an opportunity to amend, change, withdraw. All those things are still, in fact, on the table, and that needs to be clearly understood.
So the boundaries, Mr. Chair, of the FGA could be different than what we see on this map.
Or they could simply disappear.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Are there other, because this is a CRD perspective, are there other FGAs being designated from the CRD for the CRD area? Or is this the only one?
Our understanding is this is the only one in the draft RSS. But I gotta double, that was my understanding. I'm gonna double check with Mr. Gray.
It's the one area designated as a future growth policy.
That has come from the CRD.
That has come from this, originally from a resolution of council in 2012 that was then fed into the CRD. That information was incorporated into the draft which was released in 2014.
And Mr. Chair, to better understand even further, or at a deeper level, are there any other FGAs that have been submitted to CRD from other municipalities?
No, there are not any others in the RSS draft that has been presented.
So this is the only one from Central Saanich in the whole context of the CRD?
Yes.
By my calculation, Mr. Chair, the number of speakers that have spoken in favor and opposed to this inclusion in the RSS, the majority are not in favor of this additional part to the industrial designation of heating products. Am I correct so far?
That is your assessment, Mr. Spence. And I'm open to any interpretation of it. I'm not going to reply back to whether or not that's your opinion of it, and you're entitled to that.
I think it's more than my opinion, Mr. Chair, because I've been marking my ballot with the number of speakers who have come forward to oppose. What is being opposed is the FGA, not the whole of the industrial section. Because that's the issue that I'm understanding that is before this special council committee for the planning and whatever else it is. The special planning and development committee. It's regarding particularly the FGA area. It's not of the whole of the Keeping Cross.
The purpose of this meeting is to allow the public the opportunity to provide comment to the Planning and Development Committee on the draft RSS as the CRD has presented it.
And that is about the additional FGA area to the industrial center of Central Saanich.
1 second. Councillor Cormier.
I would like, on behalf of Mr. Spence, to ask a question of staff. Have the minutes for the meeting this evening captured whether speakers have identified themselves as opposed or in favor? If staff could share with us whether that's been captured in the minutes. I've taken notes myself, so I'm hoping others have as well.
Mr. Robbins or Mr. Gray?
We're trying to capture the sentiment of the speakers. So the narrative may or may not indicate specifically opposed or not opposed. There are many speakers tonight that use those words. We're doing that not, so we're not keeping a tally of opposed or not opposed in terms of the narrative. We have the council when the minutes are prepared to determine if that's important and to reread the narrative to determine themselves. We're not, as we take minutes, it's not the objective to take down who is opposed or who is in favor, but to get the sentiment of those that are speaking tonight so that you have the benefit of their opinion.
So just to clarify, so the minutes will include the narrative though of the comments made?
We are trying to get the key points. We do not take a verbatim or we do not create an answer of minutes, and so we're trying to get the sentiment of those that are speaking this evening.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Councillor Fleming.
could I just understand, if a speaker used the word "I am opposed," was that captured in the minutes, in the detail of what was?
Actually, I think, Councilor Cormier, I think Mr. Robbins has provided an explanation. I don't think we need to delve into that. I think when the minutes come out, we will see the minutes that have been captured from tonight's meeting. Councilor Peltier. Yeah, just to speak on that point without putting staff on the spot at all. To answer Mr. Spence's question, I think the purpose of a public hearing, in my perspective and from my understanding of this, is for more qualitative information from the public as opposed to quantitative. If we were after quantitative, we might just have a pollster do a survey through the district, whereas I've benefited from tonight, and I'm sure my colleagues have as well, from hearing qualitative information from our residents and ratepayers.
Mr. Chair, I think I would like to clarify that this is not a public hearing. This is a special committee meeting.
You are correct, Mr. Spence. You beat me to my punchline because I was still trying to get my mic back. You are correct. This is I considered a special committee meeting of the Planning and Development Committee, which is having some senses of public hearing-like behavior, but at the same time, I think you're seeing a little bit more activity at the committee table than you would usually see, and that's as a result of that. And the other big point with this too that we've mentioned, but again, I want to reiterate, is the difference between this meeting is after tonight's meeting, there still will be an opportunity for you to reach out to us, provide further comments and input to Mayor and Council, and that's a big difference with public hearings. Once we close that off, and I call it fly zone until a decision is made. But whereas this one, to your point exactly, there will still be opportunity for and I believe we determined right up until April 28th before the meeting, where a decision will be made, and also where there'll be opportunity for the information from tonight to be shared on the agenda for the public on the website as well.
And do I understand you right, Mr. Chair? I can.
You're stretching your 4 minutes a little bit here, Mr. Smith, but we'll go with one final question. I haven't seen anyone yet, but please go ahead.
Be a little bit pedantic about it is that there will be no further public input from the public at the council meeting, in the first council meeting in May, where this will be on the agenda. It will only be up until the 29th of April that the public will be able to speak to any members of the committee.
Well, before I speak out of turn, I'm going to look to staff and see if perhaps, Mr. Robbins, would there be an opportunity at that meeting, or will the chance end with the submission of correspondence?
The cutoff date, April 29th, is simply for staff to be able to produce an agenda. It's an artificial cutoff so that we produce an agenda. It's up to council to determine whether they want to cut off or continue on consultative process. The decision of council they would make to the point where they want to make a decision and further consultation. So the 29th date is simply so that staff can produce an agenda and publish and prepare in anticipation of the meeting on the following.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Next, I've got Councillor Thompson.
Just to clarify, I think it's important that, of course, you can call us, email us at any time. That information is on the website. So just to reiterate, the 29th only refers to letters that will be attached to the agenda. If it's after the 29th, we still receive it, it just probably may not get it until Monday at the meeting when it's collectively put together. But even after that Monday, you are free to contact us in whatever form you so choose.
And Mr. Chair, if I may make one final comment.
This space, in between the microphones, has been working very well. Mr. Spence.
Thank you very much for your patience and indulgence in my newbiness in meeting with the Central Saanich Committee. But I would want to have my voice lead in the direction of the sentiment of being opposed to the RRS, including the FTA, in the documents of whatever the district is going to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Spence. Your comments have been noted. Now, at this point, I am going to go to, I do have a first-time speaker on speaker 2. Thank you, Mr. Spence.
Dave Lang, 6844 Oakville Road. I own an industrial piece of property that a lot of you might use or might not use. I've been trying to purchase more industrial land. It is nearly impossible to do financially. I am open to projects of development around the industrial parks. That's where it should be. I also own an industrial piece of island where I have residential account against it, and it keeps getting tighter on me. That doesn't work. So keeping your industrial tight to it, developing your industrial out from there, and keeping it tight to the industrial part works. Farmers need to be supported. I work very closely with the big farmers around. Terry Mitchell Farms, Van Trades. They all need their costs to stay low. The way you do that is have industrial where you're paying your higher rates to make it economical. Half an acre of my land down here, $12,000 a year. My close friend that built next to me, $8 million project, $8,000 to $90,000 a year in taxes. Speaks for itself. You need these to make other things economic and keep it cheaper. So, right area, that's the idea. I'm for it. I'm for the ability to have it in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Any further speakers tonight? I'm not going to ask for second-time speakers because we blurred that line about an hour and a half ago. I'm going to call for a second time. Any comments from this point? Oh, Marilyn just. Well, for those of you who stayed at the end, I think that we have been given a lot to think about. Clearly, this is not an easy task. The one has to consider is looking at the future, what does it look like? And I don't think we yet know. What I will say is that part of the reason for the committee of the whole meeting at CRD next week is that a lot of input, I think 1,600 pieces of correspondence were received by the CRD from all over the capital region. And something that the community said post-election was that, in a lot of cases there's new councils. I know that we have some existing members existing members of previous councils, and we have some new members, some returning from previous councils. We're not the only one in the region that had that issue crop up. Post-election, we were asked to continue the RSS process, and we, like others, said, well, we probably need a bit more time on this. So I think what's going to happen at the committee of the whole, and this is speculation on my part, but I call it informed speculation, is that the CRD committee of the whole is going to have to consider those submissions that they receive from the public and submissions that the districts have made with regard to any and all concerns about the RSS document, what's in there, what's not in there, what needs to be clarified. And I would expect to be reporting back the week following that there will be much more coming from the CRD to help inform and complete this process. It's not by any stretch of the imagination a fait accompli from the Central Saanich perspective or the CRD perspective at this point. For a second time, are there any final speakers? I will address microphone 1.
One industry we haven't talked about this FTA affecting is tourism. And also the horse industry, so to speak.
Can you open your address again?
Oh, sorry. My name is Lloyd Deckers. I live at 1158
Clark Road. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
It costs about $10,000 a year on average, and the family friend who works as a narrator in the whole horse community, to keep a horse in Central Saanich. So if there are 15 horses in that area, they're pumping in about $150,000 a year into our local economy at a cost of probably very little public services to the taxpayer. Horses don't commit crimes, they don't tear up the roads, they produce very little waste that has to go to the landfill. And also, there are bed and breakfasts there, which is part of tourism. And horses are also part of tourism because people like to ride in rural areas on horses when they're on vacation. Tourism is one industry which cannot be moved to another part of the world. And if there are bed and breakfasts there, they're also contributing to the economy and also comparatively little cost to the taxpayer. People generally don't pull up convenience stores when they're on vacation. So any alteration to zoning laws should take into account the effect on tourism and also the effect on horses. Apparently, there are 100 horses there are 1,000 horses in Saanich, North Saanich, and Central Saanich. My numbers may be wrong, but if that's true, that means horses put in about $10 million into the economy. Maybe that's all of Southern Vancouver Island or the CRD, but that's a lot of money and requires very little services to the taxpayer.
Thank you, Mr. Deckers. Councillor Comey.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to the chair, I just wanted to bring to the public's attention a motion that is still pending before this committee. It was made on January 26th at the Planning and Development Committee. It was supported by all members of council, and it was postponed until after public input. And the motion, if anybody cares to look it up, is 34.15. And, 3415, and it was a motion to advise the CRD Regional Sustainability Strategy about a number of concerns around the future growth area. I won't read them out, but I would encourage people to be aware of that, and we look forward to our consideration of that motion at our next meeting.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Comey. That motion was deferred. Are there any final comments from the floor? For a second time, are there any? Councillor King.
I was going to assist by moving to adjourn.
Wow, all right. It's, before we do that, I want to thank all of you for coming out, sticking through it. I want to thank staff for being here. I want to thank the news review. And I will now call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Now you can clap.